back to Uncensored.
Appreciate you having me in, Piers.
There's a fascinating civil war raging in the conservative movement. As one of the grandees of conservatism in America, what do you feel about it?
Well, I dispute your title. I'm not an ideologue in any capacity. I don't even know who Nick Fuentes was until a few months ago, and I don't care what he says because he doesn't know what he's talking about. So I just wrote a book, as you know, Confronting Evil, and Fuentes goes on social media and says, Hitler wasn't that bad. So I was going to send Fuentes a copy of Confronting Evil, but I don't know what basement he lives in. But he wouldn't read it anyway, because he doesn't really care about history or the Third Reich or anything like that. This is a big scam, Piers. And the scam is, I'm going to go on social media. I'm going to get famous. I'll make money off that. I'll be paid attention to. Every neurosis I have will be catered to. But it doesn't mean a thing. There is no civil war in the Republican Party other than whether President Trump's going to be able to get prices down so the Republicans can win the midterms. That's the war. Can you get the beef prices down? Not crazy things that Nick Fuentes or these other loons say on social media. So I always sit back and I watch this. I'm a Luddite. I'm not on social media. I don't waste my time. And I watch it with fascination because there are certain people in America, in Great Britain, that have figured out how they can use social media to their advantage. And they have no scruples to say anything, but it doesn't mean anything to people's lives, in my humble opinion.
You mentioned Fuentes there. And what's interesting about him, he's gathering a lot more followers. He's appearing on big online platforms like Tucker Carlson's and so on. People are now openly debating him. I want to just play one clip of something he said.
You can call me a Nazi. You better be careful. Because if I'm a Nazi, then there's millions of young people that are following a fucking Nazi. So you better be careful about those words. You're saying I'm a Nazi, I'm a monster. There's a million monsters then. There's a million Nazis out there then. Because they love my show and they agree with me way more than they agree with you. And they're pissed off. And they'll follow me into battle. So you better be real careful. You're barking up the wrong tree with that.
Now, what I think is relevant, Bill, is that, I find him a ridiculous character. I think he's a deliberate kind of agent provocateur troll, the kind of guy who at school would, have a pop at everybody from the back of the classroom and had no mates and so on. However, we live in a different world with the media now where, the average age of cable news watchers now is over 70, for example. Young people under 40 don't watch the news. They don't watch television. They don't listen, obviously, to vinyl music. It's all digital. They don't read print newspapers and so on. They're moving very quickly to an all-digital existence. And that is why these online people like Fuentes are getting a lot of momentum with young people. How damaging could that potentially be?
How damaging is Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park? You could drag that guy off the little platform there. The only damage here is perspective. So we have in New York City a communist mayor now, Mamdani. So everybody voted for Mamdani, and most of them were younger people. Are they all communists? No, they don't know anything. And Mr. Fuentes' crew is in the same bubble. They're ignorant. They don't know history. And this guy has tapped into this ignorance in a megalomaniacal way to elevate himself. But a year from now, he's not even going to be around. But I will warn him, be careful of your own safety, because you're appealing to a fringe nut loon crowd. And that's on both the left and the right. And when you put yourself out there like that, so I don't want anything bad to happen to that young man. But as far as being taken seriously as somebody who has an effect on the United States, he doesn't. There aren't millions of young fascist pro-Hitlerites running around this country. I just did a commentary, and I hope you watch it, Piers. And if you do, I'll come back to discuss it on anti-Semitism. All right? Is it a problem in America? Is anti-Semitism a problem? It's a problem to the extent that it's the same in Ireland or in Wales or in England. There are some anti-Semites, but they don't have power, although the Irish are really getting there with Connolly. Okay, and you got to watch that. But in America, there was a poll that 70% of the 7.5 million American Jews, 7.5 million out of 340 million Americans, 70% said they don't feel any danger. Their not lives aren't affected by it, but it is disturbing. I'm not minimizing. And so I go through anti-Semitism in the world and in America, why it exists, how it happened, and up to the present day. There are people who hate Jews, people who hate blacks, people who hate Irish, all right? But these are marginalized people largely. If I felt, Piers, there was a danger to America by a rise of a hate group, I would be on that story every day. I won't put Fuentes on my program. Why would I bother? Go ahead.
No, but that's the interesting part of this, is that Fuentes has millions of people who subscribe to his stuff. They trend mostly young and to the right. Yeah, but here's my point. You're right about anti-Semitism, I believe, but he is a brazen anti-Semite, spewing quite regularly brazen anti-Semitic views to a very large group of young men in particular.
I don't know how
that's
large
why I say that
is.
I think it's probably.
I really.
Well, he has many millions of people that follow him.
Millions of people that follow you. What does that mean? I mean, they go. Out going to Sieg Heil? I mean, come on. I got two kids in their 20s. They don't have anything to do with this guy. They know who he is. I just don't see it as a social problem. Now, maybe it will develop into one, but I doubt it. The problem is exploiting a guy like Fuentes. Now, there you get into, well, if I put him on the show, I'm going to get high ratings. Most American broadcasters will not do that. They won't. And it's not that they're so noble. It's just that the corporate masters go, no, you're not putting that guy on. Now, I'm an independent, all right? I won't put him on because I don't want to insult my audience. And this guy couldn't stand up to me for 2 minutes because I know what the Third Reich was. And again, I'll go back to confronting evil. You want to know how evil it was? You read the book. Is Fuentes going to read the book? He's not. Because it doesn't advance him to know what the truth is. He's not interested in the truth. I won't put anybody on my program that I think is a charlatan, that I think is manipulating the system, because that is insulting my audience. And that's the category in which he fits. Now, the real question is the people who do give him a platform, what is their responsibility? And under our system in America, it's the First Amendment. They all fall back on that. But I think there has to be some kind of editorial discretion. And that's what I do.
Today's show is sponsored by Oxford Natural.
David asked me in his podcast about this, and I said, that when I watched the interview he did with Tucker Carlson, 2 hours to air his views, wasn't challenged in any way as aggressively as, for instance, Tucker challenged me when he interviewed me, and I like Tucker, but it was a real difference in tone, or after the way he went after Ted Cruz, for example. Is there a merit in getting somebody like Fuentes on, acknowledging the big reach he has, and actually taking him on properly, as you just said you would? It's an interesting line, which I'm slightly wrestling with as to whether it would be a good thing to do, as I've done with Andrew Tate, for example, and really hammer him over his brazen misogyny.
So confusing, what's just happening.
That there isn't any good that comes out of it, because you're talking to a person who's totally irrational. And all that person is going to do, like the trans guy you had on, is spout this nonsense, this gibberish. And I'm in the business of presenting facts and truth to my audience and backing it up with facts. And I'm not going to deal with some kind of loon who's spitting out gibberish, because it's a waste of everybody's time. There's a record, okay? This is what happened in the Third Reich. Hitler's not so bad. I mean, just that statement alone. And let me get back to Mandani. Mandani was embraced by a lot of the mainstream media that leans progressive left in America. Mandani's big quote is, we have to seize the means of production. Mandani's no socialist. That's right out of Karl Marx. He's a communist. So rather than debate Mandani, and I would put him on, but he's afraid of me, he's never going to come up against me, okay? Rather than do that, I just point out what is true, and then I point out the media that is covering up for him, Mandani, by calling him a socialist, democratic socialist. It's a bunch of crap. The guy would seize private property if he could. Period. He said it. Believe him.
Yeah. Let's talk about Donald Trump for a moment. He's coming under, I think, 2 prongs of attack, which I think are genuinely a slight risk for him. One is the latest tranche of leaked emails from the Epstein scandal, which seems to be a kind of political death by 1,000 cuts for a lot of people. I want to ask you about that, but also I want to talk to you about the general state of the economy and an interview he gave with Laura Ingraham on Fox. But first of all, the Epstein scandal. Look, the Trump administration's gone from saying, sorry, Bill, go on.
This is another bull. Look, everybody knows that the Democratic Party and the hate Trumpers want to tie Trump to Epstein. It's what they know. And this is the argument that was made, that we just can't throw all of the Epstein files or whatever they may be out to the public unvetted. This is totally unvetted. So today the White House said, look, what this Democratic congressperson is doing, we've already said. This is a woman who wrote a book, Virginia Giuffre, who's openly said, I have anything to do with Donald Trump. Now, you're not even going to hear that in the reportage on left-wing American television. You won't hear it. This is an attempt to smear Trump. And all the principles involved. Michael Wolff, his whole life is dedicated to hurting the president and his family. His whole life. Nothing has been vetted. It's all hearsay. And so I'm, as a journalist, I'm looking at this. This is a story? This is a story. It's already been denied by this woman she had anything to do with Trump. On the record, she wrote a book. And the kicker is that the Justice Department under Biden has 4 years to kick any of this stuff out. And they didn't, because there's nothing to it. If there were, the Democrats would have ran with it to destroy Trump against Kamala Harris, right? So this is just
that's
garbage.
what I feel. Yeah,
it's garbage.
Yeah, that's what I feel. I also think
the
that
American media,
I also suspect
the American media, like the BBC, isn't in the business of putting anything into perspective. It's in the business to hurt Trump. That's their business. So that's the deal.
Let me just play, Bill, another clip. This is from an interview he gave to Laura Ingraham on Fox, which was just quite interesting. Let's take a look.
If you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent. When
we
a
have
country
plenty of talented people
no,
here.
You don't. No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have. You don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put
How did we ever do it before?
Look,
what did you make of that, Bill?
He doesn't talk precisely enough. Okay? What he's saying is there are certain things in the United States that we need, that the expertise is better abroad, so we're going to recruit people from foreign nations to do that. That's what he's saying. But he doesn't say it that way. And you could do this every single day of the year because the president just throws this stuff out.
No way.
It's not that he's diminishing the American people or any of that. His point is, we want to get the best and the brightest into this country because they can do certain things that Americans can't do. Now, you can agree or disagree with that. But that's the point. And then they blow it up. He thinks we're stupid. It's so ridiculous. Man, I'm glad I'm old. I'm glad I'm going to retire soon. This stuff is just insane what's going on now.
I can't imagine you retiring, Bill O'Reilly.
Thank you.
I'd put me in prison.
Not for nothing. I think he needs to go to prison. Like, Bill O'Reilly's massive fucking cunt. I fucking hate this guy. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck was wrong with Mike earlier, but like, yeah. Oh my god. The fucking gaslighting of pretending as if Donald Trump isn't a fucking buffoon. It's fucking like, look at these. Look at the freeze caption. I should fucking screenshot this. This is the laughter. These are the faces of like, hold on. I just screenshot this shit real quick. Can I do that? Let me screenshot. Fuck. I'm not on my other computer where it makes more sense. I had to screenshot that because I'm gonna make it. Because this right here is the face of what not even evil, but psychopaths look like. It's like if you look at them, they look deranged. Two deranged old white people laughing in their privilege. Like, that's just fucking crazy. This is actually scary. This is actually scary. What the fuck is this? Oh, my freeze game is on point. My freeze game is on point.
Anyway, I got to run.
Thanks. Thank you.
I got to do a whole bunch of stuff. But look, I just want to talk to the international viewers for a moment. The social media, you got to be very careful with it. And with AI coming, and I'm sure that Piers Morgan and Bill O'Reilly will be reporting on AI extensively. It's so easy to deceive you. Be very, very careful and skeptical. Protect yourself and your family. Thanks for having me on, Piers. Always a pleasure to see you.
Bill, great to see you. Thank you very much. Joining me now, Zach Costello, host of the Zach Costello podcast, Scott Horton, the author of Provoked, and Batia Ungar-Sargon, the weekend anchor and host of Batia on News Nation. Well, welcome to all of you. Batia, what do you make of the right-wing conservative movement in America ripping itself to pieces?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Piers. It's great to be here. I'm a little bit of a skeptic of the idea that the right is ripping itself to pieces. I think if you look at who has come out sort of in support of Tucker and Fuentes and the uncritical platforming of Fuentes and who has come out against it, there's a real divide between, politicians and then content creators, so conservatives and people who make their money, creating content for YouTube, for example. You haven't really seen a lot of people who are major figures on the right in terms of building political coalitions coming out on the side of Fuentes, and you haven't seen the content creators coming out on the side of saying, look, that interview should have been more aggressive. So I really think this is a divide about media and a sort of media turf war rather than really dividing the right. The conservative movement as such seems to me rather united on the side of saying, look, we have to have a red line when it comes to Holocaust deniers, anti-Black people who believe in segregation and so forth. And then the content creators who are many of whom, by the way, are sort of, it's very hard to say if they're conservatives or progressives anymore, who are more in favor of this, no, let's hear from anybody in any, which way. Anybody who has a big following is welcome at the table.
It's an interesting debate, Zach Costello. I was just having it with Bill O'Reilly about how you decided whether to platform people like Fuentes, given that he clearly has got an increasingly big following and influence. It's a bit like Andrew Tate, slightly different, in that he spews a lot of misogyny and Fuentes spews a lot of anti-Semitism. I mean, just some of the things that he said. Women want to be raped. Women shouldn't be in politics. The 19th Amendment should be repealed. Jim Crow is better for Black people. Holding high.
I want to say that, 100% this is what Piers Morgan is saying. This is exactly what comes out the mouth of Nick Fuentes. And earlier, Bill O'Reilly says, who's Nick Fuentes? He has to win. He has broken.
Hitler Fridays and saying he was really cool, comparing the murder of 6 million Jews in the Holocaust to baking cookies and so on. He's a nasty little troll, clearly anti-Semitic. I think that's beyond any doubt. Should that mean he never gets platformed? And if he is platformed by people, should he be given a much more rigorous examination than perhaps Tucker Carlson gave him?
Well, yeah, I think Tucker Carlson, he's getting a lot of criticism with regard to how he handled the interview with Nick Fuentes. I think the way the free speech mechanism works, though, Tucker Carlson, he hosted him for an interview. Nick was then allowed to share his views, and people can argue whether Tucker should have pushed back more or not. But Tucker's position was he was going to, and he said this at the outset of his interview, was to allow Nick to explain his beliefs and how he came to believe them. Tucker never said it was a debate. So Tucker's getting a lot of heat for how he conducted the interview. But when I watched the segment with Bill O'Reilly, and Ben Shapiro got in some trouble for this past week as well. It's this dismissive, condescending way that you would call what you would describe, or how I would describe the way these kind of boomer conservatives think about Nick Fuentes and the things that he believes in. The reality is there is a large portion of the anti-establishment conservative right that is unhappy with a number of things that the Trump administration has not delivered on. One of those issues is the Epstein files. Another issue is the America First movement with regard to support of Israel. I would disagree with the premise that this is just a media or social media turf war. We just saw in these last elections last week, conservatives got destroyed. And people are saying, and they're dismissing it, oh, these are blue states. It doesn't matter. It does matter in that in almost every single county. I live here in Virginia. This is just one example, but this happened across the board in these elections. In every single county in this election, voters moved further left by a substantial margin. There is a segment in America, I'll say it again, an anti-establishment, young conservative group in America that needs to be taken seriously. And they're talking about the divide in the MAGA coalition. The divide in the MAGA coalition needs to be taken seriously because these anti-establishment, young conservatives, which got Trump over the hump to victory in the 2024 election, if everybody can remember, the popularity of Trump going on Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn and all of these other podcasters, this is where the anti-establishment men are. So to just dismiss them, as Bill O'Reilly's doing, as Ben Shapiro did, or just calling this a social media turf war, I think is a huge mistake. Bill O'Reilly, for example, said, I would never have him on my channel. I would never platform Nick Fuentes because he couldn't hold a candle to me. I would destroy him. It's like, then do it, Bill. Have him on and do it. I'll admit, Nick Fuentes has some historically proven bad ideas. Okay? But there's an America First portion of what he believes in that many do take seriously, that many do believe in, especially, as I mentioned, within that anti-establishment, young conservative Christian segment that really helped Donald Trump to victory. So I think this needs to be taken more seriously than a lot of these boomer conservatives are leading us to believe.
Right. So, Scott Horton, I want to play you a clip. This is a Fuentes talking about Trumpism being done.
This movement is over. And now the question is, what comes next? Trumpism is over. I hate to inform you, this administration is done. Stick a fork in it, it's fucking over. We played this game. It's deja vu. I was there for the first term, and I remember right up until 2020, I was saying, okay, we could still make a difference. I remember in like spring 2020, I was coping. Trust me when I tell you, it's over. We're out of time.
Scott Horton, what do you make of all this? Because I think it's a mistake to underestimate someone like Fuentes, but also a mistake to overestimate the influence of someone like Fuentes. But the impact, you can see the ripple effect now on the conservative right, particularly amongst the likes of Ben Shapiro at loggerheads with Tucker Carlson and so on. These are big figures on the conservative right with big influences, lots of followers. What do you make of what's happening here? How significant could it be?
I've got a lot of things on my mind, Piers. First of all, thank you so much for having me back here. It's great to be with you. Secondly, I'm so frustrated that I wasn't able to be on with O'Reilly and have that debate or discussion with him about so many things. He said quite a few things that I thought were really important about inflation and other things, about how fake the New York Times story about Trump and Epstein is this morning and things like that, where he really is right on. Then there's so much there that's just so frustrating. And primarily his refusal, and no offense, but I think Batya's refusal also to recognize, or maybe she's part of this, what I mean by this, that if you're familiar with the old saying about prohibition of alcohol, that it was an alliance, a conspiracy of interest between the bootleggers and the Baptists, right? The Baptists wanted people to stop drinking. The bootleggers wanted the price to go artificially high so they could make a killing, right? And so they wanted it that way. It was the same thing here where, and by the way, I should give credit to the great Bob Murphy who talked about this on his podcast this week. And what's happened here is, especially on the right, but everywhere, all across the political spectrum, anyone who has the slightest problem with Zionism or with Zionist power and influence in the United States is immediately condemned as a Nazi and an anti-Semite. And I am saying this up front, quite honestly, I have never watched Nick Fuentes' show from beginning to end. I've seen a few clips. I'm not in the job of policing other alternative media people or like denouncing them or whatever, but I think it's pretty clear that he's essentially the result of what you could have bet on anyway. That if you keep saying that everyone who disagrees with Zionism is a Nazi who hates Jews, you're going to have a young man say, fine, that doesn't hurt me, and then go ahead and own that and then beat that horse to death, which is what he's done, right? Is stake that out. And I saw him saying the other day, a clip of him, I think in context, of him saying, you say Hitler, 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 every time anyone says anything about any of these issues. And then he says, but that word no longer has any power here. That was a long time ago. It has nothing to do with what's going on with us and not like that. So what's happened is Zionism, which has a total kind of stranglehold and lock on the center of American politics, has marginalized anti-Zionism to the fringes where now legitimate anti-Semites can claim to own it. And no offense, Pierce, I would have done a worse job than you, but you made a big mistake at the beginning of that interview. You played a clip of Tucker Carlson, and then you asked him about Nick Fuentes. You gave him a big escape hatch, so he didn't have to confront what his friend Tucker Carlson, who is avowedly not an anti-Semite, had to say about Israel and its influence in this country. And who's Bill O'Reilly? Bill O'Reilly is Ariel Sharon's man in the United States of America 25 years ago, who helped Israel lie America into war because they thought getting rid of Saddam would somehow weaken Iran. And
Fucking biggest mistake they ever made was getting rid of Saddam. Like the biggest mistake that we thought is listening to fucking foreign intelligence. One day we're gonna get it as a country to just leave motherfuckers alone. Like we have absolutely no reason to interfere in foreign affairs. If it doesn't directly impact us, as in like this could happen, something could happen on on domestic soil. Leave it alone. The biggest fucking mistake. So many
mostly it was Netanyahu's faction that favored that policy, but Sharon got on board for it too. And the neoconservatives in America did that, as Tucker said in that interview. And he knows, he was at the Weekly Standard at the time. They did it.
Yeah, of course they're nervous. They're definitely nervous.
For Israel. And what Bill O'Reilly refuses to confront here then, and what Baccia is refusing to confront about the loss of the liberal center too.
Sorry about here's what I think they're really, really nervous about, and I'll stop pausing like that. But the one thing I know they're fucking nervous about for real, is like they're nervous that because of Nick Fuentes, it's going to expose the fact that the right is very, 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 very violent. And they're the cause and the source for the majority of violence and the incitement of violence. So with this MAGA divide that Nick Fuentes is creating, they're concerned that that shit might actually explode. Because you can link what happened to CK to the rhetoric of Nick Fuentes. But that's a deeper dive. I'm not gonna go Candace Owens on anybody. That's just what I feel. I feel like there's a deeper meaning.
Is that center-right conservatism, center-left liberalism are dying on the hill of Zionism, the most unjustifiable position that you could even take in this country right now after 2 years of mass slaughter of upwards of 100,000 people over there, these helpless captives on their Indian reservation over there in the Gaza Strip, being massacred like fish in a barrel for everyone's eyes to see. And then where you have certainly on the left and much more and more on the right, you have people turning against Zionism, while the political system in the middle says, no, you're just Nick Fuentes Nazis and you just hate Jews and we don't have to listen to you. And yet Donald Trump, while literally people are desperate, like literally desperate, standing in line in the rain for food because they can't afford to eat. Donald Trump spends all his time asking the Israeli president to pardon the prime minister as though he has that power to even do that. Because he's a Zionist. And that's why I never support him. As much as I hate Donald Trump's enemies on the left and in the Democratic Party, I could never support him because his death knell, just like center-left liberalism and center-right conservatism, and just like Fuentes was saying in that clip, Trumpism itself is dead. Why? Because he's never Trump. Trump himself is never Trump. He's with the Zionists to his own downfall and to his own detriment. And it's just a travesty. Enough of this.
Okay, Baccia, a lot to unpack there. You were name-checked by Scott several times. What's your response?
Well, I just think it's really funny. You're trying to have it both ways. Like on the one hand, you're saying anti-Zionism is the most censored view in America, and then acknowledging that the entire Democratic Party is anti-Zionist. You're saying every person who criticizes Israel is labeled an anti-Zionist, and then you come out here and defend an actual anti-Semite, Nick Fuentes. No. And this is the problem, Pierce, is that this is exactly how it goes. They want to have it both ways.
What did I say? What did I say in defense of Nick Fuentes, lady?
You're out here saying that because you know, that every person who is
I'm saying he's your escape hatch.
Of
That's
Zionism. No, but you
he's
said
your straw man. That's what he is.
You said that any person who is at all critical of Zionism becomes labeled an anti-Semite, and therefore Nick Fuentes has a seat at the table. Who is an actual
I didn't say that. You have to keep making up things I didn't say. I said people listen to him. I say people listen to him because he's not afraid of being smeared.
The right
he doesn't
is not actually turning on Zionism. It's true that the left is now very anti-Israel, but at Charlie Kirk's last Student Action Summit, he polled about 5,000 young conservative leaders there and asked them, where do you stand on Israel? They were all very critical of Israel, but 75% of them still called themselves pro-Israel. So I think that what's become very unpopular is not Zionism itself, it's foreign aid in general. The vast majority of young conservatives
And
young
genocide, a
right-wingers,
little bit of genocide.
people
Prison
on
rape
the right
and
Still
torture and
would
murder.
say that they 100% want Israel to, the Christian holy sites, to be under the control of the Jews, not of the Muslims. Zionism is simply the proposition that there should be a Jewish state and Jews' ancestral homeland. That view is still the majority view in
At the
America. So
expense
it's
of
not
the Palestinians and their
Zionism.
rights.
It's a question of whether people support this war. Now, of course, this war became at the end of it extremely unpopular. It went on for too long, but that's going to change, I think. And what's happening here is that you have someone like Tucker Carlson, who I think is sort of making this pretense of being an anti-Zionist or anti-Israel, but then opening the door to someone like Fuentes, who is a white nationalist.
That is
He's not
such
just
a
an
lie.
anti-Semite. He hates blacks.
All you
When
do
you have
is
somebody
lie.
like
How do
that
you look
on
at
your
yourself in the
show,
mirror, lady?
and you
Did
don't
you even
ask
watch
them
that
a
interview?
single question. You
Did
don't
you even watch that
push
interview?
back on any of their racist views.
Did you
are
watch the
opening
interview?
the door to those views and suggesting
You
that they
lie.
are part of the mainstream. Pierce, are you? I mean, I was literally told this was not the way that this was going to go down.
Well, it is, because you're a liar, and so I'm interjecting.
Well, I don't look,
Tucker
as
Carlson-
always, there's no
Pierce,
real,
is that-
there's no real
Pierce,
benefit to
can
the.
I
Well, hang
ask
on,
She's a fucking robot.
hang on,
I'm telling
hang
you.
on,
Is
guys,
that
hang on.
like-
Look, let me be clear. There is no merit to the viewers when you talk over each other. So I think, Scott, if you've got something to say back, that's fine. But let Batya finish her point, then respond.
So I just don't see things that way. I think that basically by saying you can have someone like Nick Fuentes on a mainstream
Yes,
show and not push
yes.
back on the things that he has said in the past, whether they were about segregation, about Black people, about Jews, about Indians, about his friend, the vice president, that basically says to people that these views are legitimate views to have. And I think it's very important for the conservative movement to draw a line and say, no, we understand where our power comes from. Our power comes from the fact that the MAGA movement represents where the vast majority of Americans are at, somewhere in the center. And part of that means that we don't become the thing that the left accused us of being, which is Nazis. Literally the left falsely accused the right of being white nationalists when what they were American nationalists. They accused them of being racist when really what they were supportive of America first. But now when you open the door to someone like Fuentes and you mainstream him, what you are effectively saying is we are what they accused us are. And nothing could be more important than for what the leaders of the party are doing, which is saying absolutely not on our watch.
If you open
Like, imagine being angry that somebody's calling you a fascist when you're literally behaving like a fascist, or somebody saying you're a fascist because you're literally supporting fascism. Like, imagine literally calling my white person actively calling somebody a black person, the N-word with the hard ER, and then being called racist, and then people be angry at yourself being called racist. Imagine being a Christian nationalist or a white nationalist when you're actively being a white nationalist and being mad that people are fucking calling you a white nationalist. I hate those arguments. It's like, if it's change behavior, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear you say you're not that person. I want to see you become not that person. Oh shit.
sleep, and it's probably time you upgraded yours, as I have, with our sponsor, Brooklyn Bedding. Brooklyn mattresses deliver top-tier quality, honest pricing, and true American craftsmanship. They've won awards, and they are one of the very few brands.
Like, Body is just fucking unbearable. I can't stand her. She's like a fucking robot, like a cyborg or some shit like that. Literally, everything that she said about that guy was untrue. He didn't say anything about Nazi. He didn't say anything about what she just said. She just started talking. And, like, that's probably her biggest problem, is the fact that she talked. Shit, I'm finna crash out on her. Not even a fucking pound.
Piers for 30% off. And make sure you mention Piers Morgan Uncensored at brooklynbedding.com. Promo code Piers. Scott, your response to that?
Well, yeah, at the end there, you sound just like me, saying, yeah, they use these false accusations of anti-Semitism against people all the time to marginalize them. Oh, but not when it's critics of Israel. They don't get that unfair treatment, just on other things. I mean, give me a break. And of course, I never said anything about Fuentes. I was analyzing the situation and why it is that people listen to him. I never said, oh, he's welcome to some table or anything like that. And she just lies about Tucker Carlson. Anyone can watch the interview on YouTube. And what happened was Tucker, and this part is not in the interview, but maybe you should know, Tucker actually tried.
First of all, grabby tip. I know you're a fucking bot. So replying to you means absolutely nothing. But I'm not playing anything. Hey man, great stream. Would be cool to play together sometime and exchange a few tips. I'm not playing a fucking game. I'm listening to fucking Piers Morgan. This is how I know you're a fucking bot. Go fuck yourself.
Tried to cancel Fuentes himself. He had Candace Owens on and accused him of being a Fed and a little kid who lives in his mom's basement and this marginal, unimportant person and probably a COINTELPRO agent sent to make us all look bad by saying anti-Zionist and pro-Hitlerian things. But then Tucker lost that contest because he didn't really have a leg to stand on with that accusation. And Fuentes does have an army out there. And Tucker had to eat crow. I think I didn't talk to him about this, but that's apparently the situation. Was he tried and failed to pull a William F. Buckley or a Mark Levin or a Ben Shapiro and cancel the guy. So then Fuentes won that point. So he had him on the show, and then he spent 2 hours telling him, you say that you're a Christian, but Christianity says things totally opposite of what you believe. Christianity says you should never hold people collectively accountable or guilty or responsible for anything, which is contrary to everything that you say. And that's what Tucker told him the whole time. He pushed back the whole time on that. Now, if you want to say that he didn't do opposition research and sit there and beat Fuentes over the head with everything that he ever said before, you can criticize him for that if you want, but it's just jargon. It's just pretend to say, oh, you're platforming, you're mainstreaming. Fuentes already has an audience as big as Tucker's. Tucker's not mainstreaming the guy. Tucker was accepting the reality that this guy is big enough now. There's nothing anyone can do about it, even though he already tried and failed to. So he's going to meet him and ask him his story. And then he spent the whole time pushing back on him, again, on the basis of Christianity. And then if you want to say, oh, he didn't bring up every quote about Hitler, black people, or whatever, I believe that the reason why is because Tucker was trying to leave him an escape hatch, essentially a little bit of room to back down. That, you know what? Hey, maybe I don't stand for all the worst things I ever said when I was younger or whatever, and give the guy a chance to be fair to him. After all, when you do Tucker's show, you have to drive all the way out to the middle of nowhere in Maine. It's like he's not going to just sit there and beat you over the dang head. And in this case, Charlie Kirk had just been shot. And Fuentes had been striking a tone on Dave Smith's show and others saying, well, I didn't mean that. I'm only saying this, and just backing down a little, obviously not apologizing or anything, but backing down a little bit. And I think Tucker was allowing him to do that. To say that means that Tucker was in any way endorsing all the things that this guy says or bringing him on and saying, oh, this is our new ally and all of these things is just totally false. And anyone who watches the interview in a spirit of fairness would know that that's just not even true. And it's clearly not Tucker's motive in having him on any more than he's mainstreaming and platforming you, Pierce, when he interviews you. It's ridiculous.
And then also, too, what you have is right after the Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes interview, you have the coordinated attack against Tucker by the whole swarm of Zionist influencers that then raise their hand and say, and tag Erica Kirk and tag Turning Point USA that says, look at what Tucker Carlson is doing. He can no longer do any Turning Point USA events, which we all know now. Charlie Kirk still wanted him doing those events. And I just want to add a couple things here. Like, Tucker is being criticized and he's being called the most dangerous anti-Semite in America by people like Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, Josh Hammer, for speaking out against Zionism and the Israeli government's influence on American politics and media. Nick Fuentes came out after his interview with Tucker and he literally criticized him for not being far.
No, sorry. No, I crashed out on a bot that was on my Twitch. I have both YouTube and Twitch thing. Using the Twitch chat, not the YouTube.
Not for long. Nick criticized Tucker for not being there yet when it comes to addressing the real problem, which Fuentes referred to as worldwide Jewry. So I guess what I don't understand is why the attack on Tucker Carlson for being the most dangerous anti-Semite in America, when when Nick Fuentes, who, that is anti-Semitic, is actually criticizing him for not being anti-Semitic. Right?
The bot in Twitch was nice. He wasn't like mean or anything. I don't know. It's just, I don't know why it annoyed me. I got anger issues, I guess.
He's not far along enough. But
it's because they're
when
lying.
it all comes down to it, the reality is that people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, both of whom Charlie Kirk remain friends with and continue to communicate with, despite Zionists and Turning Point USA board members lying about that, they are voices for, like I said before, many young anti-establishment Americans. And this doesn't make those anti-establishment Americans, doesn't make us evil, possessed by a demonic spirit, or stupid, like so many of the Zionists are telling us that we are. And this is why so many are alarmed and suspicious by the fact that now that Charlie Kirk isn't here, there is this massive push to cancel Tucker from Turning Point USA events. They were trying it while Charlie was alive. He never wanted it. And then after he died, in the immediate aftermath of his death, the Zionists jumped out, said Charlie was never wavering in support of Israel. Tucker Carlson is the most dangerous anti-Semite in the world, and he should never go near Turning Point USA. And then they also added that Candace Owens has mental illness and that Charlie silently broke up with her over the fact that she chased too many rabbit holes. Like, these are all lies, lies, lies. And Bhatia referring to stats of Charlie's audience before he died, I'm sorry, I think they're irrelevant, because I think after Charlie died, many people's eyes were open to the fact that what Charlie referred to as the stereotypical behavior of these pro-Israel donors that he got sick and tired of, the moral blackmail, the threats, the slander. I think all of us can see that right now, and it's caused a lot of us to be like, whoa, this is who I was teamed up with on the right? Maybe I'm going to think twice. And I think that's just the reality that we're in right now, and I think it needs to be taken seriously. Like I said before, it had an impact on the last election. When you have literally half of the right now divided, anti-establishment, and as Scott mentioned, kind of the center right, which is still Zionist, which is still pro-Israel. There's a pretty serious divide right now. And again, the anti-establishment side of this are what got Donald Trump over the hump in that 2024 election. So I think it needs to be taken seriously.
Thank you to my panel. I appreciate you both joining me, and to Bhatia, who's no longer with us. Thank you all very much. And finally, someone who's taken a fair amount of flack from Tucker Carlson lately, and indeed from some members of our panel just now, Dave Rubin, host of the Rubin Report. Dave, great to have you back on Uncensored.
It's good to see you, Piers. Let me do a little house cleaning real quick. I honestly don't know who that guy is that was just speaking at the end. I just joined literally a minute and a half ago. But I have never called Tucker Carlson an anti-Semite. I don't know what's driving Tucker. I don't know what's in his mind and his heart. If we want to talk about his ideas or the platforming or the rest of it, I'm happy to do that. But that was an outright lie just to get us going here.
Well, he was Zach Costello, host of the Zach Costello podcast. He's a Christian conservative. Just on the wider point, Dave, about this kind of civil war raging on the conservative right now, what do you think is really behind this? A lot of people think it is the Israel issue. What do you think?
Well, I think that for anyone that's really paying attention, Donald Trump has been the best president of the last 4 or 5 decades. And I, on my show every day, find it very easy to write the show because we can talk about win after win after win, whether it's related to the border or deportations or dealing with trade or peace in the Middle East, which everyone used to be for, or doing the best
Did I miss it? I didn't think the question was about Trump at all.
he can when it pertains to Russia, Ukraine, or doing stuff that we're doing in Asia right now. I mean, the laundry list of Trump's wins go on and on. So what I have found particularly bizarre over the last couple of months with all of this is that anyone that is part of MAGA or part of America First should be thrilled with what Donald Trump is doing and where the movement broadly is at. And I would also add this, Piers, which is that Donald Trump created...
Oh, why would they? He said America first, and we all know the government's being ran by Israel. You know, we're just through a government shutdown. America First, the president throughout the whole entire shutdown was trying to win a Nobel Peace Prize, going from country to country to country to country, talking about tariffs and trying to fix wars that he's never fixed his entire life. This man can sit Hamas and the IDF down for a fucking peace deal that they've been going, that this genocide has been happening for like what, almost 3 years now. But yeah, almost 3 years now. And honestly, it's still, people are still being killed in Gaza. Let's not forget that. But he can't come back to America and sit like Hakeem Jeffries, Schumer, Mike Johnson, and Doom down and have a conversation as a president of the United States and get the government back and running. Not even to sit people down and have a conversation. He's not America First.
Created a MAGA movement, Make America Great Again. And what that did was widen.
And my goddamn eggs is still high, still $5.
The conservative tent. I am not a hardcore conservative. I consider myself an old school liberal. But what Donald Trump did was bring us in. He brought in pot smoking, mushroom eating Joe Rogan. He brought in Democrat Bobby Kennedy. He brought in Tulsi Gabbard, who was running as a Democrat only 4 years ago. The laundry list of people that had nothing to do.
I thought Kennedy was an independent. Was he not part of the Green Party? I could have sworn he had to actually leave it, the fucking surrender to battlegrounds and bend the knee to fucking Donald Trump in order to get that position. And Tulsi Gabbard's always been like a
with
the only reason Tulsi Gabbard was even in the fucking situation is because Tulsi Gabbard's been Mother Russia since the entire. The reason Tulsi Gabbard got excommunicated when she was attempting to run for the Democratic primaries because everybody found out that she was too pro-Russian. She was too pro-Putin. Long and behold, she's now the director of national intelligence, while Donald Trump saying, oh, well, Putin's my best friend and all I gotta do is have a conversation, play some Call of Duty, and then all of a sudden the war in Ukraine stops. Obviously, no. Fucking Donald Trump's still getting dicked down by fucking Vladimir Putin. People are still dying in Ukraine. There's barely a fucking peace deal in Gaza. Like, come on, bro. Let's be fucking for real.
Republicanism or conservatism that Donald Trump widened the tent because we loved America. And that's what it seems to me these guys are trying to fray. We can all have differences of opinions on foreign policy, on Israel, or anything else. But it's when you're embracing people who quite literally say they're Team Hitler, as Batya pointed out, it was the last thing I heard her say, is that for years, for a decade, we've all been called Nazis and Hitler and everything else by people on the left undeservingly. So it seems like it's the lowest bar possible to just say, hey, if someone says they're on Team Hitler, they're not on our side. That doesn't seem like a heavy lift to me.
You posted on X yesterday, the mainstream media grew fat and negligent, which then...
I'm sorry for the pausing. I just want to say that maybe this can be that one of those situations when they say, hey, when we say that every active shooter that tries to take a shot at a conservative official isn't Democratic, but the Republicans immediately say this is a radical. Why can't we go ahead and say that, hey, man, this Nazi here, that's because he believes in he has conservative Christian values. So he's he's a radicalized right winger. Why don't we do this? Why
birthed an online media that became narcissistic and retarded. Can Western civilization survive that? We shall see. Expand on that thesis.
Well, I say that with all due irony to the two of us, my friend. Look, mainstream, we don't have to waste too much time on what mainstream media has done. The amount of lies, whether it was Russia, or Hunter Biden laptop, or COVID, I mean, we can do all that. They have been utterly negligent in their duty, which was to tell the truth. And they have failed at that. I mean, look what's going on with your BBC right now as it pertains to the Donald Trump lawsuit. So we don't have to focus on that. What I would say has been really disappointing over the last year or so, and largely as this fight has happened, is that the ascendant online media that you, Piers, and I are both part of right now, we had an opportunity to really bring truth to the masses in a new way. And I do my damnedest to do that. I know you do as well. And by the way, I had you on in my studio in my house here a couple of days ago. You and I agree on some stuff and disagree on some stuff, but we do it respectfully. And that's why I admire you, and I'm happy to be on the show with you today. But unfortunately, what so many people in the online world have now done is basically put ideology over truth. Look, I have my beliefs. You are welcome to question me on absolutely anything, Piers, and I will tell you what I believe. It does not mean I'm right about everything, but unfortunately, and this is a condition of the freedom of the internet, it's sort of the human experience, any of us can put on a jacket and put on a shirt and look like we're professional and seem like we're telling people the news when we're actually brainwashing them, dragging them down conspiracy theory holes and everything else. So I feel it's very incumbent on me to tell the truth, but I don't think that many online broadcasters do feel that. I think they feel it's incumbent on them to get clicks. And that's something that we just have to slog through.
One of the other big things that's raging, Dave, which is also dividing people on the right, is the Epstein scandal. It's showing no sign of abating. In fact, if anything, I think it's getting bigger and bigger and will continue to get bigger and bigger as we learn more and more from these files. And at the sort of heart of the problem for the Trump administration is they kept telling everyone the moment we're back, we're going to release all these files, total transparency, the Democrats are hiding stuff and so on. And then, two things happened. Elon Musk said when he fell out with Trump, breaking news, Trump's in the Epstein files. And then within 2 weeks, the whole investigation was shut down, nothing was released and so on. And now we're getting all this drip, drip, drip stuff from Congress. What do you make of the way this has all been playing out?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest mistake along the way was a couple months ago when Attorney General Pam Bondi said she had the files on her desk and they were going to be released. I don't know if she meant that sort of facetiously or it was just imagery that she was saying, but people literally thought that meant she had a binder with all of the information and that was going to be put out there. Look, I don't know any more than you do on this. What do the files actually mean? Are they the flight logs that we seem to have seen already? And just because someone's on a flight log doesn't mean they did all of the worst things and everything else. I think there definitely is some issue related to transparency. This is why, as a politician, you gotta promise to do the best you can. But when you just promise the world to people, if you don't give them that, they are going to take it in all sorts of crazy ways. So I would say to whatever extent there is something that hasn't been released that should be released, I'm absolutely for releasing it.
Where is Donald Trump? You talk about a lot of wins. I think he has had a lot of wins. A lot of people saying that the economy is precarious and he's got to be very careful. A lot of people on the right saying this. I've seen Fox beginning to push quite hard about affordability and what's going on now with prices and inflation and so on. How big a deal do you think that is right now for Donald Trump, and what should he be doing about it?
I think it's huge. It's a huge deal, whether it's true that some of this is his fault or he hasn't dealt with it the best way possible, or whether it's just purely narrative. Look, we're a week and a half off of a socialist or Marxist or communist, whatever you want to call him, being elected the once greatest city in the world, New York City, the epicenter of capitalism. So whether Donald Trump could do more or not, the fact is New York City is now run by someone who is an avowed socialist. So there's a narrative problem. Look, Donald Trump's not printing money the way the Biden administration was. As I said, the tariff situation and some of the trade deals, you still have to see where they land, but I think they've largely evened the playing field as it pertains to trade, so that is good. But 100%, I agree, Trump has to figure out a way to get young people in on the housing market, so that partially is building more houses. I think he's got to keep hitting Powell at the Fed over the head to lower those interest rates so young people can get in. They're trying to do this 50-year mortgage thing, which I think you can probably argue either way. It's nice to get in with lower payments, but then you're kind of 50 years is almost a lifetime, so that's a little bit tricky. I would think the other part, and Trump just addressed this, is they're going to have to figure out what to do with some of this H-1B visa and student visa stuff, because, if we're bringing in all these people, you got to convince Americans that they simply can't do these jobs if you're going to bring in all these other people to do these jobs. I believe in the American people. I think Donald Trump believes in the American people. So if we have to train people, or if we're going to take money from China, let's say, to open plants here, well, then maybe one of the conditions is you got to help train Americans. We don't want to just give, Chinese or Indians jobs. And that has nothing to do with racism. It has to do with doing what's right by America. So I would say this is a place where Trump, I think, has largely done the right thing. I can tell you the prices of eggs and certainly gas and beef, they are down a bit. But if it's just an optic
bullshit, the price of duck eggs, it's still high. I love duck eggs. I don't want the price of duck eggs to go back to being like $3. Right now it's $5 for 6 fucking eggs. The price of eggs is not going down. Until I see duck eggs at a lower price, the price of eggs has not gone down.
issue, politics, it's still an issue. So he has to do something there.
It's it's fascinating to watch because he's been so helter-skelter since he took power again at the start of the year. It's been quite a year, and I can't think of any president really that comes to mind that's done so much in such a short period of time. I think probably having learned the lesson from his first time, that you basically get a couple of years to the midterms, and then everything, your ability to do stuff starts to recede quickly into a general election. So I think he's cognizant of that. He's really hit the ground running, hasn't he? And, he could well end up being one of the great transformative presidents in history. But there are a few things there which, if they go wrong, could really damage his legacy if he's not careful. That would be my overview about it.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, look, we've got a year to the midterms, and then post midterms, he is a lame duck president. That's simply the truth. Now, I completely agree with your previous point, which is he's done an incredible amount in this year. I mean, if you just look at his travel schedule alone, and the fact that this guy's constantly giving on-the-fly press conferences and doing all these interviews and giving tours of the White House and everything else, it's incredible what he does at 79 years old. It truly is. But he does have a limited window. I would say if you're a Republican or just someone broadly on the right, you should feel good about things because the bench is pretty deep. Whether that's JD or that's Marco or that's Hegseth or Tulsi or Bobby, like there's a real bench there. The Democrats have a much bigger problem in that they're destroying each other right now. We started here, Piers, by talking about some of the problems on the right, and I'm not diminishing those. They obviously exist. But there's a bunch of solid politicians who, if they had to take over tomorrow, could do it. On the left, I mean, you basically have a Bernie Schumer war, and the people that are younger behind them are way more radical.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really enjoyed coming to your lovely home and having a great chat with you. And I urge people to watch that because I think it was a good example of people agreeing to agree about some things and agreeing to disagree about other things, but being respectful, and at the end of it, walking out, shaking hands and wishing each other well. If only there was more of that in the world right now. I think it's so important to be able to properly debate, but not start screaming or falling out with each other.
Piers, that is why I will always do this with you as long as you want. For every time that we've noodled each other on Twitter or gone back and forth on this show, that's just a small part.
Pause. Whoa.
Of what life is all about. And until we get people out of thinking that political wins are the existential wins that you need in life, then we will keep going into this pit. And I simply don't want to do it. So that's the challenge for the two of us. And let's see if we can keep doing
it. Absolutely. Dave Rubin, great to have you back.
I don't know what a radical leftist is. No. Their definition of what a radical leftist is somebody who believes that it's somebody who's pro-trans. If you're pro-trans, then you believe that the trans community should have rights, should be equal, should be treated fairly, should be seen as humans and not, dehumanized, then you're definitely radical. You're a radical leftist. If you don't agree, if you're fucking anti-fascist, right? You don't believe that fascism should be taking over, although we're so fucking close to being, I think we're there to authoritarianship in our government, then that makes you a radical leftist. Anything when it comes to protecting your freedom of speech and letting assholes be assholes about the government coming in and deporting you, then you're a fucking radical leftist. That's what a radical leftist is. Basically, you want to be a radical leftist because a radical leftist means you are pro-Constitution. A radical leftist means you're a pro-First Amendment. A radical leftist is you're pro-trans. You believe that anybody from the LGBTQ are actual human beings and should be treated as such. You believe that they should also have that children should also be able to learn and understand their classmates when they grow up and how different they are from each other. That's what that is. That's what a radical leftist is. A radical leftist is somebody who just fights for their fucking rights. If that's what a radical leftist is, then I'll be a radical leftist. They already consider me an Antifa, and I'm definitely anti-fascist, so I'm definitely Antifa. So, but shit, yo, don't noodle me. Don't noodle me at all. That was wild. That's gotta be. I hate to bring race into it. That's gotta be white. I've never heard somebody tell another man that we noodled each other on Twitter. I've never heard it. I've never heard of it. I'm sorry. I'm gonna shut up now. Okay. Well, I gotta go. Thanks you guys for hanging.